and welcome back to another edition of On the Board Sports. I am your host, Will Chiarucci, a.k.a. Will C., coming to you from Gotham Podcast Studios here in Manhattan, New York. And I'm joined, as always, by the one and only Miles. Miles is our wonderful producer. You know, he's got 2 sets of headphones on right now, bud. What's going on? He's got to do what he's got to do. That's what matters. And we have a very special guest with us today. Joining us from the After Orange Slices podcast is the one and only Bridget Case. Bridget, how are you?
I'm doing great. You know, it's a good morning out here in Southern California, so can't complain.
Wow, Southern California, amazing. Amazing from here in New York. A bomb cyclone is about to happen right now. Game 4 of the ALCS has been postponed tonight. And you're in beautiful sunny California. How lovely is that?
I know. I was wondering what was going to happen with that rain. Gosh.
Yeah, they wound up postponing the game tonight. So Game 4 is tomorrow on Thursday, and then they pushed Game 5 over to Friday, 7:05 start. So Games 4 and 5 are going to be happening, but hey, who knows what might happen. But before we get into baseball, Bridget, I want to know how you got into podcasting, number one, and number two, like what made you choose sports in all of this?
Great question. Well, I recently launched my podcast, so it's only been, a couple months. I launched back at the beginning of August. But I've been a sports anchor, sports reporter in local markets for years, bouncing around to different places, you know, the whole drill, to different, you know, CBS and NBC affiliates covering local teams. And, you know, I love it. And so sports has always been my passion. But after I left my last contract when I was working in Eastern Washington, I just kind of felt like the job opportunities that were coming up, as far as, you know, cable news, nothing was the right fit. And so I came back home, I moved back into my parents, and I just decided, you know what, like everything's going digital now, our world, no one's watching TV anymore. Everyone's watching everything from their phones. Everybody's listening to podcasts when they're on these long drives. Why don't I start my own podcast? I've got so much to talk about. All I love to do is talk. And, you know, sports is my passion, so why not marry the two and do what I've been doing for a while, just kind of in a different medium. So that's how that got started.
Listen, I listened to a couple of the episodes. They're absolutely fantastic. And the way how you engage your audience and the way how you engage the interview is absolutely something. So I just want to commend you on that first and foremost. Absolutely, no problem. And the second thing here that I want to talk about, you know, you mentioned that you're an NFL cheerleader, was an NFL former. What is that? What is that like trying to bring the, you know, because you get to see it firsthand. You get to see athletes. You got to see everything. I want to get to that experience from you. Like, what did that all mean to you?
Yeah, it's funny. You know, people will ask a lot, and they have all these certain assumptions and stereotypical ideas of what it means to be an NFL cheerleader. And usually after they talk to me for 5 minutes, they're like, oh my gosh, you broke every single barrier and broke down every single stereotype that I ever had of you. So, you know, that's kind of always a funny thing about when I meet strangers, mostly because I think there's so much more to being a cheerleader than just, you know, the glitz and glamour that people see. But yeah, you're on the field, you are in the thick of it. You're seeing the blood, sweat, and tears. You're feeling it. You're smelling it. And I mean, that's the best part, I think, about being in sports and being still in the world of sports right now, working for me, is because, you know, I felt it from that side of things. I know what it's like almost to be a player, not completely, but I know what it's like to be out there. And so I feel like I can gain a certain perspective that maybe other journalists don't have because I've had that experience. And I feel like I can also relate to the athletes that I talk to on my podcast because I've had that experience. You know, I was pretty lucky. You know, I cheered for the Chargers and when they were still in San Diego, and you know, we were treated with a lot of respect, of course, but it's still not where things need to be. You know, you're very underpaid. It's not a full-time job. Mm-hmm. It's really draining, and so it's kind of hard to. It's hard to always think of NFL cheerleading in a completely positive light because, you know, you're completely taken advantage of for sure. just because you're doing so much for an organization, doing so much for the NFL for such a long time, and they don't really give enough back to you. But you really got to take what you can out of it. I always say that it's a part-time job, but a full-time commitment, and that's really what it is because, we have lawyers, teachers, doctors that were on the team, but all in their younger part of their careers, of course, so that they were able to, take time off because you've got to be able to leave your job at any moment's notice to be gone all day for a primetime game, whether it's Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football. You got to take a full day off of work. So, there's so much that comes with it that I think people don't realize. And I don't know, there's the good and the bad. And obviously I'm so grateful that I had that experience, but I was kind of ready to move on just because, it's not a lifetime career that anybody can make anything out of. And I think that now what I'm doing is kind of marrying the two again and I'm kind of using my experience to tell my story and still getting to talk about sports. So I still feel like, I'm out there on the field every day.
That's a great, great attitude to have right there. A lot of people just don't really, they look at people like yourself and they say, okay, what do they do next? And, you're doing something that many people always talk about, and in this world that we live in right now, you got to go out there and you got to pursue it. My question is to you right now in all of that, do you see cheerleaders probably even getting like a pay scale going up and forward, with everything going, with money going up?
Well, here's the problem is that not every team is on the same page. So the problem is that I think that NFL cheerleading needs to be regulated by the league and not regulated by each team. So that's kind of the problem because each team makes their own salary. So some teams, like I've heard of some teams that barely make anything, and then I've heard some teams that will make, I know this sounds like nothing to most people, that will make 400 something a game. And some girls won't get paid for games, but will only get paid for appearances and will only get paid, maybe $8 an hour for practice. So, it kind of depends. Everyone's all over the scale with that. And I think that that's what is the most unfair factor is that it's not even across the board. So I think if the league can regulate something like that, or if there could be some sort of, NFL cheerleaders organization or association that protects the cheerleaders, that would be best. And a huge factor is that production companies also help NFL organizations produce the squads. So what that means is that's why so many teams can get away with paying cheerleading teams so little money is because they're kind of like the middleman. So it would be like entertainment and event sports companies that put on like huge things for the Super Bowl and stuff, but they'll own multiple NBA, NFL cheerleading teams, and they will be the ones to actually give us our salaries. So you're not actually getting paid directly from the Chargers organization, the Seahawks organization, or whatever it may be. I don't know which teams are which, but I know for the team that I was on when I was the Chargers, we were owned by E2K Events and Entertainment. So that was kind of our middleman. I know the Clippers are the same way. I know the 49ers are the same way. So that's a big factor is that's how they get away with so much, because a while ago when some lawsuits were being filed by former Raiders cheerleaders, everybody thought, okay, cheerleaders across the board all over California are going to get a pay raise. That's not how it works because, with the Chargers, we are technically produced by a middleman, even though the Chargers pay us through the middleman. So it's very interesting how that all works. And I'm probably not getting all of the legal jargon right, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Hey, I learned something new just now with the whole middleman.
Yeah.
I thought the Chargers would pay, you guys or, whoever the cheerleaders are now directly instead of having to go through a middleman. So that's that's amazing right there, to say the very least. I got to ask you another question right now. Postseason baseball is up right now, and I know you're close to Los Angeles, everything like that. What was your take on the Dodgers losing to the Nationals, the eventual
Oh,
NL champions, Washington
you know,
Nationals.
that last game, watching Clayton Kershaw just hurt my heart. He's done so much for this team. I'm an Angels fan, but I'm still partial to the Dodgers. I mean, this guy has put so much work. Talk about a full, well-rounded athlete who's done so much for our community and deserves a World Series. I mean, the Dodgers are the epitome of almost there and can never get it done.
Right.
My grandparents are huge Dodgers fans, so I know what it's like to grow up and them waiting again for it just to happen. And they're in their 80s, and I'm just like, well, I hope they can get another one by the time they're done. But they're a young squad. Besides being behind the helm of Clayton, I think that they're going to come back stronger than ever. I think it is a little bit tough, though, because they were probably the strongest team besides the Astros rolling into the postseason. So I think that was a big shock, just how it went down.
Absolutely. And Howie Kendrick going into Dodger Stadium and, hitting the
Oh, my
grand
gosh.
slam before.
Yeah.
But even before, with Juan Soto and Anthony Rendon hitting those 2 home runs off of Clayton Kershaw, that was just absolutely unbelievable. Walker Buehler had himself a night to remember, but at the end of the day, and you kind of got to feel bad for Clayton Kershaw too, in a sense, because
oh my gosh, it hurt my heart.
Yeah, I mean, every time that he keeps on going out there, it seems like, okay, maybe he'll put it back, but they wound up not doing so hot. So you mentioned that you're an Angels fan. You mentioned that you're an Angels fan.
I was going to say with that, I mean, you bring up Howie Kendrick, so it's fun for me to see him succeeding. I mean, I think, especially with him getting, MVP last night, it's really fun for me to see him just killing it. So especially after last year with that major injury, nobody knew that he was going to come out like this, just balls ablazing. It's amazing. I mean, that's what I love about baseball, though, is that anything can happen, and all of a sudden, he's back better than ever. And it's not like he's a young fresh guy,
Yeah, and I just want to get off the postseason thing for a second here, because I know you're an Angels fan. I don't know if you heard the news or not. Joe Madden signed with the Angels to become the new manager.
Oh God.
And he was the bench coach with Mike Scioscia back when the Angels won the 2002 World Series.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get your thoughts on Joe Madden becoming the new Angels skipper.
I mean, everybody knows I was tweeting about it right when Brad got fired. I was like, call Joe. I thought that he should have been the transition from Scioscia last year. I thought it was the perfect transition. He's got a connection to the Angels squad from way back when. He played in their farm system for years. That's what I love about Joe Madden. He's not this guy who is this long-time major league career big stud. He's this guy who has been in the trenches, knows what it's like, and then built his way up. I'm a huge fan because he was the bench coach during 2002 when, we were the dream team. Troy Glass, Tim Salmon, Garrett Anderson, Darren Erstad, David Eckstein, all those guys who brought so much joy to this community, and he was able to be a part of that. And he knows what it's like to bring this organization back to. I hate to use this, but because we were owned by Disney at that time, there was this sort of Disney camaraderie from the team that had so much more of like a wholesome environment and was less about the glitz and glamour and the fast-paced, just one franchise player. And, I love Mike Trout. I love him. He's a great guy. And, I don't want to lose him, and I don't think that that's a solution. But I think that there's more than, just hiding behind Trout. We got to figure out something. Obviously, we've got big names. And, even having Pujols on the team is great. But I think that we need to find some sort of system like he did in Chicago, a couple years ago, 2016, where he was able to take a team, and quite a few of them were quite young, and put something together to the point where it wasn't just one guy who was doing all the work. We need to show that, you can make something out of the misery that is being an Angels fan right now. So I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm excited to see what he'll do. I knew that was going to happen, though, and I was just waiting for them to ink the deal, and I was just checking Google every 5 seconds because I swear, I felt like no one was putting out the reports fast enough.
Who was your favorite Angel growing up?
Tim Salmon, for sure, 100%. And I've met him multiple times. He grew up in my town. Well, not grew up, sorry. He raised his kids in my town, and he is a stand-up guy, obviously true Hall of Famer, just real good guy, and I was the biggest fan. I was Tim Salmon in 2nd grade for Halloween, but I think that 2002 team, really that early stretch of the 2000 to 2005, was such a good group of guys, again, like I'm talking about, like these just wholesome guys, that lineup of men who really set an example for what it means to be a team player for a franchise and not be so worried about signing deals and inking contracts for money. They cared so much more about winning. And I think that that's what we need to get back to because, God, I mean, that's just not where we are right now, especially in the LA market. I mean, it's tough, man, to be in an LA market. If you're not winning, no one's coming to games.
Oh, absolutely. And, the last time the Angels made it to the postseason prior was back in 2014 when they won the AL West. And, it was crazy then. Everybody thought that they'd make it.
And then they didn't win a game.
Right. They wound up getting, what was it, the Royals they wound up losing to in the ALCS?
I think so, yeah.
Or the ALTS?
I went to one of those games and I can't even remember who it was.
Yeah, I just remember them being in the AL. I don't know if it was in the AL. No, they played Baltimore. Kansas City played Baltimore in the ALCS, and then beforehand they had to play the Angels. So I definitely remember that. But no, growing up as a Yankee fan, especially in 2002, you alluded to the 2002 World Series with the Angels. I was a huge Yankee fan. And I still am. I'm wearing a Yankee jersey right now.
Yeah.
But it's crazy because I remember that series, and that was the rally monkey. You had Troy Percival going out there closing games, young K-Rod.
Yep.
Just bringing back a lot of memories right now, and even Scott Spezio, hitting that home run against the Giants in Game 6. You guys are down.
Everyone rallied behind Percy, but again, it wasn't this whole thing where it was all about him on the mound.
Right.
It was like he had this defensive squad behind him where, I don't know, there was just so much different of a brotherhood than I think we have nowadays, like in the league.
Absolutely, and the contracts keep on going up, the TV revenue keeps on pouring in and slipping in, for the players. So they're gonna want their money no matter what. I got a question for you, Bridget. Okay, who is your favorite person to interview ever?
Oh, that's a good question. Who's been my favorite person to interview? Okay, I'm gonna have to think about that. As far as the podcast goes, I've had some pretty interesting interviews, and one of my favorites actually was, a guy that I didn't know too well until I met him on the podcast. His name is T. Shane Johnson, and he's running across America right now, and he just set a record for the fastest mile with 100-pound backpack on.
Right.
And he is an incredible ex-Marine, knows what it's like to work hard, just an insane athlete. And he died 3 times. He's been in an insane motorcycle accident, died 3 times, saw God, and wasn't a religious man. Like, had this whole experience that he enlightened me and my listeners with. And I just felt like I was really changed after that interview because, I don't know, there's just something that happens when you talk to people like that who really remind you that there's so much more to life. So, I don't know. I really enjoy when I get to talk to people like that. Another fun interview that I got to do was one of when I was in Eastern Washington, a retired NCAA basketball ref who had recently hung it up last winter, I don't know. His name is Dick Cartmel. He was a great interview, and he grew up in the town where I was living in Tri-Cities, and he was just an awesome interview. And he, was recently inducted into the Hall of Fame and had won all of these awards. And he was a ref for years and really worked his way up. He never played professionally or in college or anything, and he just started reffing intramural games and then worked his way up to, repping all these Final Fours and being the reason Carmelo Anthony, needed to calm down. And it was just a really cool experience to kind of learn how he got where he was. And so I love those really interesting stories where, again, you can kind of learn about a person, but realize how sports brought them somewhere and made them who they are, and how that created it's like so much more interesting storyline, because sports is something that I think we forget is not just a game or a score. It makes us who we are. And it's like this emotional thing that we can all connect and bond on. It's kind of like a universal language that brings us together. So, I think that that's the most fun thing about interviewing people in the field that I'm in.
Absolutely, and it brings people together, like you said. I heard it before from somebody. I forgot who it was, but politics divides us. Sports brings us together, and that's the main thing. And Bridget, it's unbelievable that we're connecting here on two different coasts talking about sports. I want to get your take right now. Speaking of another LA name, LeBron James has been in the spotlight now for the past couple of days, and it's kind of amazing to me how this guy is a social justice warrior and everything like that. He's out there claiming for social justice, and now we're seeing this going on in China with Daryl Morey's tweet. It got deleted, but I want to get your take on what had happened with LeBron James, and what it's crazy to me how here's a guy that's making millions, like I said, and going out there. Space Jam 2 is coming out. He's playing for a premier organization in the Lakers, and this has to happen. I want to get your take on this because this is really, really interesting here.
Well, one, I think we should just send Dennis Rodman out there just to, settle everything. I think that would just solve a lot of our problems.
Right.
But no, it's one of those things where I feel like this is always why we have such a bad, why athletes get a bad rap, is because stop sticking your nose in a place where it doesn't need to be. He is doing such good things for our community. He's built schools and programs in Cleveland. He helped our California governor sign the bill to help college athletes get paid in California starting 2023, and that's great. But you are completely misinformed as far as what's going on in China. You are just creating more world issues. Think back in, how many years ago was it when we had UCLA players who were detained in jail?
That was 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah, over in Asia. This is not something to screw around with.
Right.
So it bothers me that, he thinks that he can just speak out like this. And, he has a platform. This is what happens when you are this famous, and I don't think that this is the way to do it, but I think he doesn't realize, when you've got so much money like that and you're able to speak out like that, you forget what the real world is like. And it's insane over there right now. And I mean, I don't really know how to completely fix it, but I'm upset with him because there's so much that he does for our community. And then he just goes and does this crap. And it's like, I don't really know. I don't know. I don't know really how you fix that because, Hong Kong protesters are dying and being imprisoned every day. And it's not something to screw around with.
And not only that, too, but Nike has their factory out there, some factories anyway.
Yes. So many jerseys are made out there.
Right. Too. Slave labor wages are being enforced over there. And, Nike, LeBron, they're all making a profit while these people over here are dying, trying to make a living. It's kind of a shame in a sense, But it truly is a crazy thing what's going on.
Poor fans there because, I mean, they are such a huge part of the NBA fan base.
Right. And not only that, too, but they're burning his jerseys. I mean, if it was any other team, because we know with the Rockets, they drafted Yao Ming, and the relationship that they've built over the years with China, and now this has to happen. And especially now this guy's LeBron's bringing his name and his stature into this. It's just a bad take on what had happened. Do you think Nike reached out to him prior and said, look, listen, we don't want you to say anything, or Adam Silver said something to him, been like, you know what, here's a guy that's been told yes all of his career. Do you believe that?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, if I were Adam Silver, I would just, there'd be so much pushback I'd be facing. I don't know what I'd know what to do with him right now. But I feel like Nike has so many more political controversies on their plate right now. I mean, think about all of the spokespeople that they have signed over the last, couple of years, like Colin Kaepernick and such. This is not their first rodeo. So I don't know. It's kind of, they've got a lot of PR nightmares to fix.
Right.
So, I mean, I really would like to see what's kind of going on behind the scenes with that. So that's a good question, honestly, and I don't know how to answer it.
All good. I understand that. And even with Colin Kaepernick, too, he's probably getting paid, a handsome amount to just basically say, hey, look, listen, I'm going to sit here and make money off his shoes and everything like that. Yep. And, he's not going to go back into the NFL as much as people would want that. It doesn't make any sense for him to go back into the NFL.
No, but he's complaining, and his agent is still complaining that he has not gotten one callback or one invite. But I don't blame him. I mean, here's the thing: you're not good. You're not going to get invited when you suck. So there's that. It's not just because of your political outspokenness. So.
Yeah.
I don't know. But that's the thing. That's why LeBron can get away with this stuff and can get away with his tweets and such.
Of course, because he's King James. Come on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm still amazed that they came back from China. I mean, let's be honest. So.
Yeah, it's crazy what's going on. I want to get your take now. Speaking of basketball, you're in the Los Angeles area, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I am, outside of what had happened with LeBron 2 years ago, I wasn't a fan of him coming over to Los Angeles. I'm a huge Lakers fan, diehard Laker fan. But with that being said, what's your take on what's going on in Los Angeles basketball right now? Because you have two franchises kind of going in opposite directions. Directions here. I mean, honestly, the Clippers are trying to build up their status to, trying to be an elite team, obviously led by Steve Ballmer's group. And you look at the Buss family with the Lakers, it's like every other day it's a circus. They're like the Knicks from the middle 2000s right now at this point. It's becoming like that. It is. What's your take on it?
Well, I think it's funny. Like, I think Kawhi is going to become the new LeBron of the Clippers. But it's just funny because Kawhi is so much less outspoken. He's a more quiet guy, but he's the one, I think, he was helping somehow. Was it Paul George? Who was he getting over to the Clippers?
He got Paul George. He got Paul George over.
He was getting Paul George over. I think he's going to be the guy to be making those moves. And whether it's that he has a good relationship with Doc or not, I just think that, it's going to be interesting to see the difference between such a quiet personality and LeBron's outspokenness and his show and his, and basically what the Lake show is. I think that's what it's going to come down to is kind of the flair and the vibe. But, Kawhi's coming off a championship. So I think if he can lead LA to some wins, this town is going to turn on the Lakers and root for the Clips because LA just wants to win. Nobody wants to watch losers play, even though this is a Lakers town. And people are tired of it. Most people are upset that Magic left. And especially when you're talking about all the stuff with Jeannie Buss going on, there's just too much of a mess. There's too much of a mess in the Lakers organization right now. So nothing's organized. I think that the Clippers have a lot more going in their favor right now, and I think that that's kind of where the action's going to be, especially if Kawhi can kind of fuel that Raptors energy that he's taken off that championship run and head into this season.
Not only that, too, Anthony Davis is in the final year of his contract, and what's going on over there?
You're fighting with LeBron. It's kind of like to be in the spotlight. I don't know.
Right. There's a lot of things going on with the Lakers right now, but it's crazy. The roster is sort of somewhat inorganic in my mind. You're signing guys over here to basically win, and then you're probably going to blow it all up afterward.
Yep.
And you still got to go out there. It's almost like Dwight Howard, and Dwight Howard wound up signing with the Lakers again after what had happened 6 years ago. It's almost the same situation, just about. But that's why they play the games. Who knows? They might go out there and win it, but LeBron's on the wrong age of 30 at this point in time. But again, time will tell what's going to happen here. Bridget, I just want to get one more take with you. Football, okay? We talked about every other sport. Football. The Rams right now, they traded for Jalen Ramsey, and the Chargers, after what happened on Sunday Night Football, one of their players went out and ripped the crowd and people going out there. Just basically, it was a pro Steeler crowd at the Steeler Charger game on Sunday.
Yeah.
I want to get your. I know. I want to get your take on the Rams and the Chargers.
Well, Jalen Ramsey's been trying to get traded since the beginning of the season, so it didn't matter. I don't think it mattered to him where he went. I think he just wanted to get out of Jacksonville. So, I think finally they're able to, Jags are finally able to move forward. But I think it'll be really interesting to see kind of how he moves in with the Rams organization and their defense, because obviously coming off that Niners loss, that was a big heartbreak to this LA fan base. And the NFC West is way more competitive, I think, than people realize. The Seahawks are in it. The Niners are in it. There's no reason for people to just all of a sudden think, okay, the Rams are going to go back to Super Bowl again this year. Goff's going to be fine. Yeah, of course. It's not always the healthiest team. But I would say that, they've got to watch out for the Niners. And this is not something to screw around with. So, I think it'll be really interesting to watch how the NFC West shakes out, because it's a super competitive division, and it's all going to come down to the wild card race, I think, because, oh my God, this is not how I predicted things to shake out. As far as the Chargers go, we started last season 0-4. So that's the one reason why I have like a little bit of hope, is I'm like, well, last season was a way worse start. There were so many terrible towels in the stadium last Sunday this week. That's just what it's like when you're playing right now in a soccer stadium. They don't have a permanent home right now. Every game is like an away game, and I think people forget that. But the Chargers have not won a home primetime game in like the last 4 or 5 games, something ridiculous, or like the 4 out of 5 games. I don't know. So they just don't do well under that pressure, under that, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football pressure, which is unfortunate because they are such a talented team. Phillip Rivers is a future Hall of Famer who really, really deserves a Super Bowl. He is the one guy who has over 200 starts, who is ready to get to the big game. And it's just not fair that he hasn't made it yet. And, of course, football is not about fairness, but I swear it's like the Chargers are your classic team that just gets doused with injuries year after year. We can't keep a tight end healthy. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense. We can never get a kicker healthy, which is ridiculous, because that should be the easiest position to have somebody solid at. But, of course, I feel like the entire league this year is just kind of screwed with kicking for whatever reason. So, I think it's been funny kind of to watch our kicking unit be completely all over the place, and we're kind of having to make do with what we're given right now, And I think that that's kind of where we're at is, okay, get through the beginning of the season. Melvin Gordon just came back. He's finally going to be putting in the time because he knows that he owes it to the team. And so I think that that's going to be huge, just to have him 100% back. We're so lucky to have Austin Eckler. He's my favorite player in particular. And I think that those kind of players that come out of those tiny schools, undrafted, who you never expect to be so explosive and put up these insane stats and also be so selfless on the field. Those are going to be your guys who are going to be key to getting to the postseason and beating the Chiefs and not losing to the Broncos again when you shouldn't be losing to the Broncos because I'm sorry, but Joe Flacco is not your franchise quarterback. Like, he's not a guy who is going to have this way overextended Tom Brady career, and I don't think that he should be overhyped just because all of a sudden, they got that win over the Chargers, and I think, obviously over in that situation, John Elway needs to think a little bit further as far as making some moves. But, the West Coast is an interesting place right now, but the Chargers need to kick their butts into gear, especially with how things are going. And we've got a tough schedule, but we're playing the Titans this weekend, and Marcus Mariota's not playing, and Ryan Tannehill's going in. So I'm a big Marcus lover. He's my guy. I went to Oregon, so I'm upset that he's benched, but I'm kind of pumped because hopefully this gives Phil a chance to get a win, and we can finally get back into gear and get on a roll and get ready for another postseason run. That would be amazing.
Absolutely. And you look at the schedule over here with the Chargers remaining. They have the Titans. They have their quarterback controversy going on right now. Ryan Tannehill looks like he's going to be starting on Sunday. Then you're going up against the Bears at 1:00, and then the Packers. Another game that's going to be really kind of close somewhat. But all these games have either been they've been close, and the same thing with the Broncos too. They've been close. They've been really
Except
close.
for last week, but then they caught up at the end. And
right.
They had just not – oh, my gosh, it was like that last minute.
Right.
And but, that's kind of the story of our lives. It's like they're in every single game. Every single score does not show, the real score of the game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally understand it. Sometimes the score doesn't dictate how the game is played, how the game was played. And looking at all the box scores and the stats – there's that heart, the hustle that doesn't really get to be shown in the box score. So, have you been to the Charger Stadium, the one that's been played?
I went the first year. So what was that? 2 years ago? Yeah, I think that 2017 season. I went when they first were in there. It is actually really awesome. It feels like you're in a video game. And the food is incredible. It's very luxurious, and there's cabanas and cool umbrella patio situations and outdoor bars. It's very cool, and it doesn't have not that NFL stadiums are trashy, but Qualcomm Stadium in San Diego was so old, so obviously that was pretty trashy. But
right.
the upscale energy of the stadium is fascinating. There's so many seats where you can just sit in the restaurant and eat and watch. It kind of reminds me of being at Angel Stadium or being at any baseball stadium for that matter. So it's very cool. The energy there is awesome. It doesn't feel as small once you're in it because you'd rather have a jam-packed, sold-out stadium than a team where maybe they're not winning as much and you've got a bunch of empty seats. So, and that happens to the Rams a lot. So I'm sorry, I don't want to be playing in the Coliseum with a bunch of empty seats, especially when you've got USC branded everywhere. And I think, a lot of that, is covered up, but the seats are red. So,
Listen, I get it. It's a small stadium. It's very, very – it's a soccer stadium is what it is the Chargers have. And the Coliseum, I'm sure you've been there plenty of times. What's it like being there at the Coliseum? Coliseum has to be spacious, luxurious. As far as watching a game goes, what I just want to get your take on that too.
Well, I I've never been for a Rams game, but I've been for lots of USC games. And
Right.
obviously, when I was going to Oregon, I cheered in when we played USC there. So the Coliseum is such a magical place. I mean, it's so historic. I mean, it's really cool. But I definitely think that it's much different when you've got the college football environment and the boosters and the donors and the student section and the band. That's completely different. So the Rams have to work a lot harder, I think, to get the stadium filled and make it feel like it's truly a Rams home game, because when you look at that thing on TV again, like, you're still seeing a lot of red. But the Coliseum is still a very cool historic stadium, but I mean, it is concrete. So that's the other thing. You're still going into all these other stadiums when you're playing away games, and you're realizing, okay, everyone else has these flashy boards, and it feels like we're playing in a freaking UFO over here at Gillette, and it's you're competing with that. So I think it'll be good once we move into the new stadium next year for both teams, and I think that that will be kind of a fire under both teams' butts, and it would be kind of cool to see an all LA Super Bowl some year, maybe in the next couple seasons.
That would be very interesting.
Yeah.
I know we're for time here. I know we're for push for time. I want to ask you one more question, okay? One more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You got it.
You've been to the Charger Stadium. You've been to the Coliseum. Have you ever been to the Rose Bowl?
Yes, and I cheered in the Rose Bowl, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, but I actually grew up a UCLA fan. So I grew up going to UCLA football games. We had season tickets all my life. That's how I got my love for college football. My dad and my brother and I would get in the car every Saturday morning. My dad would put us in the car at like 5 a.m. We'd go get bagels and coffee and juice it up, and then we'd go back and sit on the couch and watch College Game Day all day.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever the Bruins were in town, we would go to the Rose Bowl and we would be at home games. So my dream was always to go to UCLA, and but I didn't get in. So that's how I ended up at Oregon. But it actually ended up being the best thing ever, because UCLA was not a good fit for me, and I secretly knew that I wanted to go to Oregon, but I think I didn't want to disappoint my family, because my entire dad's side of my family and then part of my mom's side all went to UCLA. So, and my grandparents, my great grandparents, it's all down the line. It's fun because I have that history of my family there, and then I cheered in the Rose Bowl when we played Wisconsin. In 2012. I think it was the 2011 season, so it was the 2012 Rose Bowl,
right.
Which was super cool. And I mean, we won the Rose Bowl, and that was fun. And I got to be in the Rose Parade, which was awesome. And there's of course, I saw my parents when we were turning the corner route and our float hit the TV spot. So of course I'm jumping down on the float when I see my parents, and it's super funny because it gets caught on camera. And so I mean, that's a magical place and it's very cool. But I will tell you, it's really sad to go to UCLA football games and see that place about half empty. And obviously, because I'm a Duck, I was really hoping that Chip Kelly would be able to pull things around and turn things around. So I'm hoping that he still can. And I'm, such a Chip Kelly fan, and he's the nicest guy.
Of course.
And I, have met him personally many times. He's so kind-hearted, and I just, I hope the best for him, because he deserves that. And, our LA colleges are struggling for sure.
I can only imagine right now, but hey, you know what? In a couple of years, these guys will be getting paid. And, you mentioned...
It'll change everything recruiting-wise.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Chip Kelly, you even mentioned it, too, with UCLA. He was the Oregon coach over there, too, for a long time. So,
yep.
So it's a good thing to see. Bridget, so out of all the three, the Rose Bowl is your favorite stadium?
Well, I got to cheer in the national championship in 2011.
Right.
So I would say, and that was at the Arizona Cardinals stadium. So I would say that was just the coolest experience. just because it's the national championship. But we lost to Auburn that year when Cam Newton was on the team. So I hated Cam Newton forever. But that was probably, I feel like, the coolest experience, I think. I think that was probably my most fun stadium memory, I think. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Bridget.
Mm-hmm.
Bridget, how do people follow you on social media?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at After Orange Slices, all 3 words, After Orange Slices, and then on Twitter at Bridget Case, Bridget, Case, Case, with underscore at the end of my name. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome, Bridget. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Learned a lot from you today, and hopefully, you're always welcome back on the show. Just wanted to tell you that, and thank you for coming on. Really a pleasure talking to you today.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me and thinking of me, and I really appreciate it, and I'll help any way I can. This is awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Bridget.
No problem. It's so great talking to you.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon, all right?
Okay. Sounds good.
You got it.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. That was the one and only Bridget Case from After Orange Slices. Her podcast is absolutely amazing. Go out there and check it out on Spotify and wherever you get your podcast, because truly it's one of the better listens you'll ever want to hear. And, what more can you want from that? Girls from California, cheerleader, and now she's pursuing her dream. It's a great thing. Really is. For everybody here at Gotham Podcast Studios, for Bridget coming on to the show, thank you again, Bridget. And for Miles, our wonderful producer, I'm Will Chiarucci. We'll talk to you guys soon. Peace out.